Hello, everyone, and welcome to Off the Shelf, a show where we take things off the shelf and talk about them because everything has a story. If you are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Rick. Hit that like and subscribe button. Also, hit that notification bell. We would really appreciate it. Also, check out our merch store. All the links are down below. Joining me on the shelf, as always, you would have seen him on the latest cover of Time magazine, Captain Joe Dove. How are you, Joe?
I salute you, sir. I am doing well, and I'm very excited about what we have today to share with the collection verse.
Excellent, excellent. And joining us for the first time on the show, and we are very excited to have him on the show, the King of Warhammer, Graham. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I don't think I'm the king of Warhammer. I
We're
think
about to find out.
it's one of those things where you see my collection and you go, "Oh, that's big," but then there's someone on the internet where you're just going like, "Okay," where they're like, "Okay, I've moved my wife and children out of the house in order to have a bit more shelf space." They're like living in a motel somewhere, and it's like, "Okay, well, I've managed to find space in my Blood Angels army, so it's all fine." What's a divorce? No, it's brilliant to be on the show. Thank you.
Oh, very well. Awesome. Awesome. All right, Joe, you know what? Since we've been talking about this, let's get into it because I've got a lot of questions.
Same.
All right, Graham, what do you collect?
I collect Warhammer. It obviously, if you don't know what Warhammer is, it's both a war game and a miniature collecting and building and painting game, where you buy miniatures in lots of different kits, you put them together, you paint them, and then you can play games with them. And there's a variety of games. So the main game I play is Warhammer Fantasy Battles, which is a dead game now, technically, by Games Workshop, because they discontinued it about 7 years ago now. Where they basically discontinued it in order to bring out a new game, which they call Age of Sigmar. But they're basically bringing it back because I think what they did is they got rid of the game and then they did loads of other stuff with it when they weren't being too precious about the IP, and they gave the IP to loads of video game companies. And then they brought out the amazing Total War series that you might have seen, Total War Warhammer, which has blown everyone's socks off. And now that's really popular. They're like, maybe we should bring this back. So either later this year or next year, they're going to bring Warhammer Fantasy back as a game called Warhammer The Old World. And they also do a thing called Warhammer 40,000, which is kind of popular somewhere. Yeah.
Wow. A lot of stuff.
Yeah, but basically that's it. And different people get different things out of the hobby. So I know it's one of the later questions, but basically a lot of people just do it to build the models. So I was in a store the other day and we got this weird dynamic with a family where the retired dad buys the models to put them together and glue them and stuff. And then he gives them to the son in order to like spray and paint and stuff. And then he gives it to his son, who then plays the actual games with it.
Wow.
And so they all do a different bit. And it's like
that's
a wonderful old, thing in a family. I thought it was
beautiful. Family playtime. Yeah. All right, you ready to look at what
we are ready, man.
We're ready. Let's rock and roll. All right. So walk us through all these armies here.
Okay, now what we have here is this is something really weird because this is a new model. Like I said, fantasy was like killed off like 7 years ago, but these are actually new models that were released for the new game, Age of Sigmar, which I've repurposed to fit into the old game. So basically, they're a different thing that I'm proxying, which is basically where you use use a model that's not for what it's meant to be for something else. And they fit really well. So it's the great thing of a lot of fantasy players have managed to take the new models coming out that they like. They're like, hey, that's really cool, and managed to fit it into their existing hobby. Because there's a lot of people still playing the old game. It's just there aren't new things coming out for it. There aren't like new rule updates coming up from Games Workshop. So yeah, but this is a cool little model. I'm using them as Slaneshi Chosen. And I don't know how much depth I'm meant to be going into this because Slanesh is one of the 4 Chaos Gods. 5 Chaos
Gods. In as much depth as
go for it.
How many days do we have? Is it still 2023? Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, it's really good. But what we'll see is with a lot of these armies, there is a lot of gold trim. There is a lot of gold trim on them, which is a lot of fiddly detail.
So you were saying you paint all of these, and you also mentioned that you put together like, how, you have to like snap them together, or do you have to like
what happens is they come on sprues. So basically they come on they're big plastic sprues, like rectangular in shape usually, and then you use clippers to clip the bits off the sprues, and then a knife to take the extra bits off. So if you had like plastic model kits before, it'll probably be the same. And then basically you glue them together. So for metal and resin models, you basically use super glue, whereas for plastic you have like little, what's it called? It's the plastic glue, which basically melts both sides of it, and then you hold it together. And
epoxy.
Epoxy, that's it.
I have one model that I built one time, so I know what you're talking about.
We're on the same page. So, okay, I don't need to explain one thing then. Okay, we know how glue works.
Glue, yes.
But no, it's one of these things where it's like, I won't get into it yet, but it's the fact of it's a very therapeutic thing for a lot of people to actually put them together. And you get stages. For instance, like a lot of the time you'll buy the models and you'll be like, I'm in the mood to put something together, and you'll have a massive pile of ones that need to be painted that you've already put together and they need to be painted. You're like, no, I'm not in the mood for that today. I'm going to do this one. And then you just make the pile bigger by putting new ones together. And then going like, oh, okay, that's made the problem worse there, really.
Gotcha. So are these called anything? Are they like...
this army here for Warhammer Fantasy is Warriors of Chaos, who are basically, Chaos are the dark gods. So they're basically, imagine like the most evil powers where they all represent something. So you have Nurgle, which is the god of death and pestilence. You have Tzeentch, which is the god of change and magic. You have Khorne, which is the god of basically bloodshed, war, and honor, bizarrely, like martial prowess. And then you have Slaanesh, who is the god of pleasure, pain, desire. Basically, Slaanesh represents all of the eight deadly sins, you know? And it basically means that what we get is we get human worshippers who get corrupted to the powers of chaos, where they kind of go, oh, actually, oh, I do like a bit of sex. Oh, you know, like, oh, I do like a bit of greed and a bit of money kind of thing. And then they eventually go, oh, I can get more money if I pray to this god. And then eventually they become a crazy sadist like we have here. So in this Warriors of Chaos army, what we're seeing at the moment is followers of Slaanesh. And they are basically debauched people. They're basically people who take a lot of drugs, go to battle. They love pain and pleasure. They love sex. They love experience. And their god blesses them. So that's a crazy thing. Like for them doing bad things, they get rewarded. So the more depraved they are, the more Slaanesh is like, you are doing well, aren't you? Here you go. Which is how I imagine Slaanesh sounds. It's a bit London. It's a bit southern, but you know.
No, that's accurate.
Also, the model we just had on there, the one on foot there that hilariously has not had his base finished, that is called Sigvald the Magnificent. Now, he is one of my favorite characters in all of fantasy because all of the Chaos Gods, they have a mortal chosen one who is basically their sort of avatar, their favorite warrior. And all of the other gods have these massive monster creatures where they're basically like, big, like, you know, brute strength or sort of like horrendously mutated and corrupted and everything. Slaanesh's one is literally a 16-year-old kid who's absolutely beautiful, who just walks around and chins people. So and it's just this weird thing where all the rest of them are like big hulking monsters and stuff. And then Sigvald's just this like really hot twink who hilariously doesn't even, because he's so perfect, Slaanesh doesn't want him to be sort of like sullied in any way. So he actually floats a couple of inches above the ground so that nothing can stain him as he walks.
Wow.
Like these little touches about them. And it's they basically, he was such a good character that they brought him back for the Age of Sigmar game, but they kind of spoiled him a bit because they made him into this massive monster, and you're like, oh, like all the others, you know?
He's no longer unique.
I just love the idea of a god being able to pick anyone in the entire world to be their champion, and then just being like, he's nice, yeah. You know, it's like, but yeah. Anyway,
now, is he as powerful? Is it like, are there power dynamics with the character?
Yeah, he is probably the most powerful. He is ludicrous, if perfectly honest. The other ones tend to be a bit sort of like sneaky. So they've got like magical powers, or they've got sort of like you know, the one for Nurgle is called Festus, and basically he just carries tons of potions of poison, basically. So at the beginning, so in combat, basically, rather than attacking, he just basically grabs an enemy warrior or the enemy general and pours a vial down his throat and just goes, "What's this gonna do?" You know,
Oh, wow.
which is horrible. But then Sigvald is literally just martial prowess personified, where he is literally just a blender. He is so good in combat that he can just tear entire units apart. And I've played games with him where him on his own has taken out like 40 people.
Oh, wow.
Just standing there, being them trying to hit him just ignoring all of them, and then just gradually killing everyone. So yeah.
Can I ask a question? You know, you said you paint these.
Yeah.
The color, do you choose the color, or do you have to inform with some like a guideline, or you paint them any color you want?
This is the wonderful thing about Warhammer. You can do anything you want. You can paint them any way you want. Like a couple of years ago for Warhammer 40,000, Games Workshop tried to kind of enforce stuff where they kind of went like, hey, you get bonuses if your army is painted to fit this particular force. Where they kind of said, hey, there's blood angels if they're painted like, well, that's a bad example, you know, because that's a whole separate army. But basically they went, if your army's painted this way, then you get these extra rules. But then everyone was like, or I could just paint them however and still use the special rules, which is what everyone did. But they did make an effort to kind of unify stuff. But the joy is that you can do whatever you want. So you get some people who do crazy armies, like the undead army that you'll see later. I've seen someone who did an undead army and they did it entirely black and white. They did it proper universal monsters, where the entire army was grayscale, like it was like an old monster movie. And wow, you know, you are just like, this is impressive. But for mine, for Slaanesh, it's all clashing colors. Because the whole point is they've taken so many drugs, they're so bored of normality that they're like, okay, I literally need things to be bright blue for me to see them, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like the dynamic now where it's pink, it's purple, it's blue, it's gold, you know?
I love it. Yeah. And then this is an overview of like how big one army is.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting. This isn't actually official. This isn't Games Workshop models, okay? Because like I say, they killed off Warhammer Fantasy, where they basically went, oh, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to bring this new game out. And what it allowed is it allowed a lot of fans to make their own rules. So a lot of the fans to kind of continue the game how it should have continued by adding the armies that were mentioned in the lore, but were never actually released or fleshed out. So the fans kind of took it upon themselves to go, hey, we're going to make... and there's an amazing thing called the Warhammer Armies Project that hilariously has last month received a cease and desist order from Games Workshop, basically going, hey, you have to take your content down because we're taking our IP back. But one of them is Amazon's, who I've wanted for a very long time. And then other companies stepped in to make the models. So these are by a company called Titan Forge that basically they used to do like an online shop where they molded them themselves. And then you could buy them. But now they just do 3D printing, where basically you sign up to their Patreon. They give you the 3D print files for like an army a month, and then you can print them out and paint them yourself. So this was a labor of love, painting this many Amazon warriors.
Wait, so you 3D printed these yourself?
I bought lots of them. They did a Kickstarter. So when they first started, they did a Kickstarter where you could spend loads of money and buy loads of them. But then that only took you so far because obviously I didn't have billions of pounds back then. So I bought what I could then. And then when they released the 3D print files, I 3D printed quite a lot of them.
Oh, wow. So you have a 3D printer?
I do, yeah.
Oh, neat. So do I.
Hey, amazing. Yours is probably better than mine, to be fair. No. I need one of the big ones. I need the ones that you use for massive things because I've just got a dinky... And the detail you get on it is fantastic, but like the amount of problems, like literally I print like 3 things off and then I'm like, oh, there's a leak, or oh, I need to drain the vat, or oh, you know, and I'm like, I'm getting to the point now, I'm like, can I just throw money at it? Which is the frustration, because I would happily pay Games Workshop if they release the models again. If they release stuff, I'd be like, have my money. And instead they're like, no, we've killed that. And it's so we're very excited for it coming back. Because then I'll be able to be like, oh, good.
How long did it take you to paint all that? I mean, that's a lot there.
That took a long time. What you're seeing there probably took about 4 months. 4 months. Yeah. And that wasn't during a very bit. That wasn't during a busy period, thankfully. Hilariously, that is the one unpainted model you're going to see today. Okay,
Oh, wow.
which is the massive thing where I haven't.
I love this. I was like, oh, that looks cool.
Look at the size of it. When you
It's
think
huge.
that each one of the guys is probably the size of your index finger, and then he is just this thing. But I haven't quite braved painting him yet. but all the others, like if you see them up close, the detail on these particular ones, like all the little things, like is insane.
Yeah, we have some photos that we're going to share that later.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I think the best thing about this army is that Warhammer, the Warhammer world, like we have with a lot of old fantasy, like Lord of the Rings and stuff, isn't a very inclusive thing. It's basically, oh, everyone is white races, or everyone is Germanic races and stuff, or they're kind of stereotypes. Like, and Warhammer is no exception, where the Warhammer fantasy world was like, okay, we've got Japan, which is basically Nippon, who we'll see later, and we have Cathay, which is their version of China. We have Ind, which is their version of India. But the rest of them, the actual main armies that Games Workshop released models for, they're pretty much all Caucasian, or they're all sort of Germanic kind of races. So this was a wonderful opportunity to do an Amazon's army and then try different skin tones, because it made sense to me that an Amazon's army would basically be a lot of different things. It would be a lot of warrior women all gathered together from like shipwrecks, from different tribes, from different things around the world coming together, and then having this sort of mixing pot of like ethnicities. And so it was really great getting to paint like darker skin and getting to paint ginger, like really bright, pale sort of white people.
That's awesome.
And stuff. So it was a good little challenge doing that. But then, yeah.
So
a lot of work.
Yeah. About that big guy in the back. How many pieces was that to put together? And is it?
He is actually not that big, because what they've done for that is that wasn't 3D printed. I bought that from them. And basically it's done through different molds. So I think basically they just made 2 proper molds for it. And I think it's only like 4 pieces. So I think each wing is a piece, the body and the legs is a piece, and then the head is a piece. So it's much chunkier than you would usually get with resin or plastic. So it's like a harder resin. Like But luckily it's not that difficult to put together. But some of them are fiddly.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God.
Hey, look how many of the piggies.
How do I explain this? Okay, it's Slanesh again, but basically you have different armies that what we've seen what happens when humans worship chaos. What this is beastmen, where basically they are mutated people, like people who are so far off they're mutated to be a whole new race. And I decided to do an army where they worship Slanesh, so they're basically hedonistic beastmen. And this is a converted chariot, where there's an official model for what the chariot should look like, but it didn't feel Slaneshi enough for me. So I converted this one. So it's being pulled by a thing called a fiend, which we'll see more of later. But yeah, and lots of little doggies in the background.
Yeah, really awesome.
Now, this is Lizard Men.
Lizard
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's another massive collection that I noticed. It was like,
this is quite good, because these are like the opposite of the Amazons, because they live in the same place. They live in like a continent called Lustria, which is basically, I don't know whether it's meant to be South America or whether it's meant to be Africa, but basically it's like the cradle of the Warhammer world, effectively.
gotcha.
And basically these are just lizards. So what happened is the lore behind them is that the gods, the old ones, basically created elves and went, hey, cool, protect the world, you're my chosen creations. And then the elves fucked it all up. Can I swear?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Well, I have now. We'll do that later. But that's how dramatic what they did was. That's how badly they messed it up, that you have to use the F-bomb. So basically, the old ones were like, okay, they kind of messed it up. We'll make another race. And then they made lizard men, who are basically a lot less intelligent, maybe, but amazing warriors that can't be corrupted by the forces of chaos.
Gotcha.
So they're basically the ultimate good guys by proxy of not being clever enough to be, like persuaded.
Wow. And this is
because they're jungle themed, they've got a very bright palette here. They've got, so I just wanted to have every unit being a different kind of color. So these things with spears are Sauruses, Saurus warriors, and then the thing in the middle is a Bastillodon. And so I just went, oh, bright orange. Nothing else gets to be bright orange, so they might as well be.
There you go.
That's crazy.
And then there we go, where there's Temple Guard with one of my favorite characters, who is Lord Croak. So there's a lot of puns in the Warhammer world. Okay,
Yeah,
so
Lord Croak, like he's dead
because he croaked.
Yeah,
Because basically he is like one of the Slan mage priests, and what happened is he died. He was one of the most powerful sorcerers, but he died protecting like one of their temple cities by unleashing the most powerful spell ever, where basically just, it was effectively like a nuclear bomb that killed all of the enemies and stuff. And he died in the process, but the spell was so powerful that he kind of has kept on. So he hasn't quite died. So basically, he's technically dead, but then they wheel him out in battle and they can prompt him to do the spell again. So basically, he's not really conscious or doing anything, but like he can just in the middle of a game just unleash that spell and devastate everyone. But I just love the idea of just having this sort of
zombie type of thing.
Yeah, zombie frog, basically.
Zombie frog,
They wheel him out.
Yeah, oh, it's a special day. Let's wheel Granddad out. Get him some sun. Yeah. Yeah. And they're just more lizard men. So we have little skinks there. We have Saurus Riders. The big dinosaur there is a thing called a Carnosaur, which is weird because it's a dinosaur riding another dinosaur, which is, I don't know, it gets into that weird Disney thing, where it was like, wait, is Goofy and Pluto are dogs, right? Or
I thought Goofy was a cow.
I know people. I don't know. Yeah, it's that whole thing. I'm going. Hang on. What's the owner here? But dinosaurs on dinosaurs. It's going to be big.
Wow. And then this is one of the.
That's one of my favorite. He is basically called Teto Echo. He's a special character in the game, like Lord Croak. I don't know what the pun on Teto Echo is, but basically he's like a skink, which is the lowliest form of lizard men. But he became so good at magic that the mage priests decided to be like, actually, you can ride with us. Actually, you're that good. So he's basically just got all these crazy sorceress powers where he can rain meteors down on the enemy, which is hilarious because the way it works in game, is a lot of armies have a very tactical deployment where they basically put their units in a specific way and they keep them tight together so you can't flank them, you can't get in at the side. And then Teto Echo is like, I'm going to put a large meteor in the middle of all of your guys. And then immediately the opponent just kind of goes, let's move. And they just move out of formation to avoid this massive meteor coming down. And then you just kind of wipe them up. So it's wonderful tactical stuff you can do in the game.
Oh, that's awesome. And these are the wolves.
These are the vampire counts. Now, the vampire counts are basically undead, but led by vampires. So this is a very typical von Carstein army, which is one of the bloodlines of vampires. Have you ever done Vampire the Masquerade or whatnot?
No, I can't.
Okay, it's a role-playing game, but essentially there's not just one type of vampire in the Warhammer world. There's like bloodlines where they come from different progenitors.
So like, what do you call it? The most cheekiest bastard in New York City. What we do in the shadows. It took me a second.
Kind of like that. So basically, they have like and the ones from a certain bloodline that descend, who have been embraced down a certain line, have powers reflective of the person that started it all. So they're all kind of different. So you have like the von Carsteins, which are the regal, the Dracula ones, basically, where they have a lot of undead wolves. They have a lot of skeletons. They have a lot of weird thralls and stuff. You have the Larmians, who are like beautiful women, where they're basically
like Syrian.
Like sirens, effectively, where they kind of lure people in, and all of these men are just like, oh, I'll do anything for you, mistress. You have the Necrocs, who are basically Nosferatu, who are horrendous. It's like the most important thing for them is magic and sorcery, but to the point where they just lock themselves up for like thousands of years studying, forget to eat, become horrendous, like skeletal Nosferatu type figures. And then they come out and they're like, wait, what year is it? Like, I finished my thing. Oh, everyone's dead. Okay. And they're all quite mad because they literally just lock themselves up. So you get all these wonderful stories of a Necroc being like, haha, I'll invent a spell to get revenge on you, human warrior. And then they spend 1,000 years doing it, come out and they're like, he's dead. Oh, well, I'll cast him on his family then. And it's like,
I'll get him again. Yeah, that's awesome.
Quirky things. Then you have the blood dragons, who are basically warriors, who are basically like, I don't know, like noble warriors, like vampire knights, where they're heavily armored and they go out and they're kind of the opposite of Arthurian knights, I guess. I don't know how to describe them very well.
Yeah.
And then you have the Strigoi, who we'll see one of them later, hopefully. They are horrendous monsters where they've devolved to the point of being cannibals, where they are just absolutely horrendous monsters that just eat corpses and tear people apart.
Wow.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah. So we're seeing more things. These are Ushabti, which are a Tomb King's unit that we'll see a bit more of now. And then, there's some unpainted dark elves at the side there, which is a bit cheeky. And behind them are fell bats, who are basically just massive bats that they send out. And it's quite good.
That was my question. It's like, what's the deal with these bats? Okay.
Yeah, they're just massive. Well, what they do is you can distract the enemy, because Warhammer Fantasy is a very tactical game where it's all about flanking. So it's all about basically you can attack a unit head on, but you can get an advantage if you actually charge the enemy in the side. And if you can kind of flank someone in the side and then get your best unit into the other side, then you kind of pincer movement them. And then it has like different effects in the game. So what the bats allow you to do is basically just have more maneuverability, because undead tend not to be very fast,
right?
And kind of pincer the enemy, I guess. I'm simplifying it massively. So.
No. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Oh, that's Neferata, who is hilariously, we were talking about vampire bloodlines. She's the one that started it all. She is the first vampire that did everything. So she invented the potion. She was trying to replicate another potion and basically messed up and made the potion that turned her into a vampire. So it made her super powerful, but made her hate sunlight and have to drink blood. And then she shared it with like her inner circle, who then became the other progenitors. And she's still around now. So she's the head of the Larmians bloodline. And she is a beast.
I knew it was like, this is cool, because it looks like it was a two-headed horse on but like dead.
Yeah. Okay, don't know how deep to go into the lore, but basically what happened is when they blew up the Warhammer world, when they ended the game, they basically had like this massive blowout thing where they had like a massive, like the end episode of a season where they just go, hang on, we're going to finish this, and we're going to use all the CG, we're going to blow all the budget on it. They basically did a thing called the End Times. And they upgraded all of the sort of warriors, like all the heroes. And for Neferata, they just went, hey, you can have a massive steed thing. Because she used to be on like foot. So she used to like slog around on foot. And they were like, no, we're going to give you this massive beast kind of thing to ride around on, which is pretty cool.
That's very cool.
It has a name. I don't know what it is. That is a Vargulf, what we have there, which is basically what happens to a vampire if they don't drink blood for a long time. They end up totally feral.
Oh, that's cool.
So a lot of things like the Necrocs especially will basically chain up like vampires, like, vampires that have pissed them off, chain them up for about 1,000 years, not feeding them. And then they'll open it and they'll be like, oh, okay. And it's become this horrendous monster called a Vargulf that then just goes around and tears everything up.
Nice.
And next to him, the guy in red on the horse is a special character called the Red Duke, who is basically he's an Arthurian knight who basically turned from the light, I guess.
What's his name? Percival. Oh no, Lancelot. Lancelot was like, "Hey, I'm going to bang your wife," and
that's it. Well, can you blame him? Really? To be fair, the secret is everyone was.
Yeah. Nice of the round table indeed.
What was on the round table? Move the picture. It's getting dark.
So is this her or is this another character?
This is a character I made, because the great thing about Warhammer is that you can convert models. So you don't need to, like we're saying about the painting, you don't need to actually follow the guidelines for models. You can take bits from other models and you can put them together in a different way and make something yourself. So this is like 3 different models put together, and then the actual skirt bit I sculpted myself, not very well, admittedly. I sculpted myself out of modeling clay, the stuff where you mix both sides and then you have like an hour to quickly put it together. So I converted it because I wanted a vampire like that on foot.
That's cool. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, right? It's a small model.
Yeah.
How do you get the detail in its eyes and the teeth?
It's so detailed. And you're saying,
okay, but how do I say it? The secret is not having a social life. So the secret is dying alone. Okay, so no, it takes a lot of practice. Like it's like with anything. Okay, like where when you start, it's going to look horrible. Like all of them are going to look like they've been in some kind of nuclear accident or something. When you start out, and then like as you get better, you just go, oh, and you learn tricks over time. For instance, like I think for this one, for the mouth, I used a tiny little pen. So you can get a pen where it's basically like 0.05 like millimeters big. So it's this tiny little thing, but it's a pen. And then you tend to use them for the pupils of the eyes or going around the eyes to make the eyeshadow and then like coloring between the teeth. But a lot of the time when you paint, there are things called washes, which is basically like liquid paint. And then you do that to get into the recesses. So you can paint like the model sort of red, and then you put the wash over and it'll go into all the little bits and darken them. So it'll basically, as though you were sort of painting all the lines yourself, the wash does it for you. It's really good.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I depend way too much on washes.
It's funny because I know I'm the American of the group, but I actually use millimeters for measurement for my job. So I actually know what, So
hold on, you know what millimeters are?
I know. I'm the American that knows what millimeters are. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Joy. Appreciate it.
No problem. I understand your maths.
We're all learning. We're all learning here. I always wonder how Americans play Warhammer, because it's this sort of thing where like what was that? What's that thing called? Oh, I forgot what it is, but where someone's forgotten their memory and someone keeps trying to remind them about something, and they're just like going, what? What? I imagine that's what it's like trying to explain how like inches and stuff work in Warhammer. And,
not for Joy.
Not for me. I'm millimetered up, baby.
That model there is the original model for Manfred von Carstein, who is hilariously how do you explain him? Basically, Manfred von Carstein was a von Carstein vampire, and he's one of the most hated characters in Warhammer because he's basically a dickhead. He's like a vampire, but whose main characteristics is that he's very cowardly and very sneaky, and literally all of the rest of the von Carsteins are way cooler than him, and yet he's the one that keeps surviving because all of them go, I'm going to kill all the good guys, and then gets murdered, and he's just like, see, I didn't do that and I'm still here. So but there's a lot of stuff. They changed his model dramatically where they basically made him a totally different like look later on in the game, but I kind of hate it. Like they made him kind of bald. They made him bald and hench, where they made him like massive muscles, and they made him look really threatening. And you're like, but his whole lore is that he's a coward. I don't quite, his whole lore is that he's a wizard who just runs away from everything. So okay, so I use this model rather than that one.
Makes sense. I thought that's super cool.
We can see the unrealistic headdress there, where the wonderful thing about Warhammer is basically that people just go out wearing the most extreme thing in the entire world. Can you imagine not only being on a battlefield, but wearing that skirt and that headdress that is 3 times the size of your actual head?
Yeah, no, that's not going to work out too well.
I think the only person that can pull that off. I think it's literally like the most extreme drag race thing you've ever seen. It's like, I think it's either Drag Race or Grace Jones. They're the only people that can pull that headdress off. So.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This was super cool. I
love how we've got a picture of it without the horses. So it's just it looks even more spooky now.
It's got ghost horses.
It's just like, you've never seen a ghost horse before. But, it does have skeletal horses, but not here. But basically, this is a thing called the Black Coach. And the Black Coach is... see, they continued this one into Age of Sigmar, and they brought out a fantastic new model for it, but that's like too big to use for fantasy, so we tend to use the old one, which you have to get on eBay and stuff now. But the lore for it in fantasy is basically when a vampire kind of dies, like they can be brought back to life by using a black coach. So you basically put their remains in a coffin in the back of the coach, and then you drive it around the battlefield, and it gathers all of the pain and suffering and all of the magic and stuff from around the battlefield and uses it to regenerate the vampire, and eventually it'll get reborn. And it's quite cool because the model comes with a little casket with a vampire in it, where you can optionally put the lid on it, and then you can optionally put it in the back. So for that particular model, it's free. I haven't glued it down, so you can just take the little coffin out the back. And
Cool. Yeah.
there he is. Hey, I forgot to take a picture of him.
Yeah.
Hey, there he is, getting ready to come back to life, like.
And then you can see in the foreground you have the top of the casket.
Yeah, that's it. So
I love
it's
it.
these
I
wonderful
love it.
little
That's
things
so
about the
cool.
models, because the great thing about Games Workshop kit, this is a very old kit, but they still do it now where the kits have options on them. You don't need to build them a certain way. So a lot of the models will be like, hey, you can have swords, or you can have spears, or you can stand in this kind of way, or you can stand on that. And yeah, it's just nice that this goes, do you want the casket open, closed? Do you not want it at all? You know, cool little stuff.
Cool.
Very cool.
Things. The different army, this is Dark Eldar. This is for Warhammer 40,000, which is the futuristic game that still goes now. I have very few Warhammer 40,000 armies because it's never really
This
appealed.
is few?
I have few as in compared to fantasy. Okay, I think I only have 3 or 4 40k armies. But this is my favorite. This is Dark Eldar. And Dark Eldar are basically evil elves. So if you know the lore, if you've seen like the Thor
Thor the
2.
second movie, yeah.
Yeah, like basically that's what they are.
The one
they're, but they're basically mixed in with Hellraiser. So so basically what you do is you have a race of elves where I'm not going to go massively into the lore, but basically they thrive and they get eternal life. So they live forever through pain, through other people's suffering, basically regenerates them. So what they do is they just go around the universe collecting people, like stealing people away in order to torture them endlessly, to cut them apart and do horrible things to them and whatnot. And then it basically keeps them alive. So it's a bit like Dark Crystal, where they get they drain the elixir out of the person. That is basically Dark Eldar. And they are the most terrifying thing about Warhammer 40,000, I think, like in the lore, where it's the idea of you just want to die rather than get captured by these guys. So when you see the models, all of the models are very spiky. They are very Hellraiser-esque. They are very horrible. Yeah. There's one. There's a grotesque, which is basically a Frankenstein monster. Basically, Frankenstein's monster, where basically you have these things that are effectively Cenobites called homunculi, who are the doctors, the doctors in a kind of World War II way. And basically where they just experiment. So they get people, like usually enemies, like usually captured enemies or whatever, and they just experiment on them until they're these massive hulking beasts with no will of their own that they just send out on the battlefield. And it has vials of like stimulants and stuff on its back there, which will activate during the game to make them faster and more resilient. They're essentially just killing machines. But yeah, and I love them. That's what I love about the army. So I have a lot of grotesques in my army, and I have a lot of Talos pain machines that are probably later.
Cool.
Very fat fingers. These are this is what an army looks like before you paint it. Okay. So this is an army that now hilariously, what you should do, and we have a thing for Warhammer fans where we have a thing called the pile of shame, which is the models that you have that you're never going to get around to painting, where you put together more models than you're ever actually going to finish. And what these are is a model where basically I bought all of them. I spent ages buying them. And because Games Workshop kind of got rid of a lot of stuff, I had to kind of buy it on eBay and things. But luckily, these models were still around to buy on the web store. So I bought a lot of them, and rather than keeping them in the boxes where I could just sell them on if I was never going to actually get around to doing the army, and then like put them on eBay and stuff, I couldn't help myself. So I put them all together, and they've been sitting there for about 2 years now, waiting for a lick of paint. But everything else has got in the way. But I just love them. These are the Warhammer Fantasy equivalent of the Dark Eldar. These are basically evil elves for a fantasy setting. So there we have a cauldron of blood and the witch elves around it. And witch elves are basically crazy women. Yeah, they're basically crazy bitches. So they are absolute. They just murder everything. Yeah, so we're seeing a pattern here with
a lot of murder going on. Yeah,
it's mostly the statue there is a statue of their god, which is Cain, the god of murder.
There we go. It's excellent. It's exactly what we need.
I like it. I like gods when it's like, it's says what it does on the tin, really.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, okay, I wonder what he's about.
Open room for murder.
Yeah, he's like, oh well, I've had a change of heart. I'm for lollipops and rainbows now.
I'm the friendship god. Would you like?
Yeah, that's it. Cain, the god of friendship.
And then you have like a 4-headed dragon.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's a Hydra, like
in Godzilla,
the way a normal Hydra works. Yeah. They're quite good because the dark elves are basically harnessed monsters. So basically, they just go, "Hey, here's a massive monster. We're going to beat the crap out of it until it does what we say, and then we're going to lead it into battle and get it to attack people."
Nice.
That's basically what they do. He's a special character. He is basically a pirate. He is called Lokia Fellheart. He was one of my favorite characters in Warhammer, so I had to get the model for him, even though he gets quite expensive on eBay now. And basically, he is a very, very savage pirate who does big, I can't say the S word, but they do raids for...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, raids for people who work for no money, basically. Yeah. And that's his job. And that is Hellebrand, who is basically murder. So she is one of the funnest characters in all of Warhammer Fantasy because she is basically like, how do you describe it? The menopause personified, basically. Because
wow.
Because the thing about the elves, like we're saying, with the Dark Elder and 40k, they need pain and suffering to thrive. Dark elves, when they've been around for a lot, elves live a very long time, but not forever. But the dark elves have found a way that they can stay young forever by basically bathing in blood with the right rituals. And then once they do that, they basically just stay young and beautiful and live forever. But a jealous rival, who is one of the most famous people that I don't have a model for yet, called Marathi, who is the oldest character in all of Warhammer still alive, basically tricked her and messed up the ritual deliberately so that she actually doesn't stay young and beautiful. So what happens is she is actually her real age. So she is like a horrendous kind of crone, like an old sort of crone woman. And then once per year, she gets to actually bathe in blood and regenerate fully. And then she becomes what you see here, which is like this crazy murder priest. And then, and then after that, she goes back and it doesn't last very long. But she is we talked about Sigvald earlier being a very powerful character. She is better. She is a glass cannon where she is the most murderous thing in the entire game. She can kill absolutely anything, but she's unarmored. So she's very easy to kill.
Right. But I'll kill you.
But she'll murder everything. So she is the epitome of, she will kill everyone. And then the last guy standing will be like, just stab her. And you're like, okay, fair enough. More beastmen. More converted chariots with steeds of Slanesh.
Very cool.
This is the Nippon. This is the same as the Amazons, where this isn't an official Games Workshop army. This is also done by Titan Forge, but this is basically the Warhammer equivalent of Japan, which is called Nippon in the lore. And they're basically Japan. It's like it doesn't get more deep than that. So we have all these things. We have dragon riders, we have samurai, we have monks, we have geisha girls, we have oni.
Wow.
Like sort of enslaved demons. We have all of the... Now, what the great thing about this is one of the forces where the Warhammer Armies project that took the torch from Games Workshop unofficially once they killed the game off, kind of worked with Titan Forge. And then, we got this wonderful thing where they brought out an army book, and then the Warhammer Armies project basically imagined what units that would consist of, and then models got done for it effectively. So it's just, this is a labor of love. This has won me a lot of painting competitions, if I'm honest.
Oh, nice.
Because a lot of the time when you do tournaments where you actually play against opponents and stuff, and you play, for points and things, there tends to be a sort of best painted army thing. And I think I've won like 3 times at 3 different tournaments with this army, because
that's awesome.
People just love it, but it's great. Like, I don't know if you have a picture, but my favorite unit is the Geisha Girls. Like,
no, I don't have the photo.
Oh, the Geisha Girls, where like, I just love them because they're so beautiful and so elegant, like the way they're done. And I managed to do these wonderful pastel colors for them, which is, as you've seen from the rest of my models, isn't something
is this
I
the
do
Geisha
very
Girls?
often. No, these are
Oh,
the heroes
no.
though, and I love how the sorcerer that you can see there is blatantly from Big Trouble in Little China, where
Yep.
they've blatantly done,
Yeah.
where you just go like, can you do a Japanese wizard without it being, like, can you do an Asian wizard without going, oh well, maybe it should be like that?
Yeah.
And then we have the what's he called, the Daijo, who is basically the general, and we have a little fox spirit, a kitsune, at the side, and then we have an army standard bearer, which is who she's carrying the flag at the side there.
Who's the big guy?
Oh, the big guy. Well, basically, what happens is that big unit behind them is like a unit of samurai, and in the rules for this game, they have a thing called I think it's called a Mitsuko Shrine. And basically, it's a shrine that a unit can take with it, and it basically bestows blessing on the units. So basically, the unit it's with, it kind of gives special abilities to. And obviously, it's like a monks on it. Like it's done like a big sort of gate, a Japanese gate, with a monk striking a bell behind it, but it's pulled along by a sort of oni, so a big demon pulling it along. It's really cool.
He looks cool.
He looks very cool.
Yeah. There it is. I just described it. There it is. And you can see the geisha girls in the background there, and then you can see the big unit of monks behind them, who are doing the worst job of being pacifists I've ever seen, if I'm perfectly honest.
Pacifist this sword up your ass.
That's it. He's like, what?
All right.
Pacifist.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it is time to go into the next section.
Hey.
Now, I know, Graham, you were talking about a little bit about it, but go more into detail where you get them from.
It's a strange one, actually, because it sounds horrible, because I really want to like support Games Workshop, but like they kind of did a lot of people ugly with like the whole killing Warhammer Fantasy. It was one of the thing with Warhammer Fantasy, though, is that it was very expensive. Like what you've seen there, all of those models, that is a lot of money. Like, and when they came out, in order to play the game, you know how we have hobbies where they have a certain cost of entry.
Yeah.
Like where we kind of go like, oh, okay, if you want to start up, it costs you like this much to buy decks or cards or stuff like that. Warhammer Fantasy, literally, the starting point was about 300 to 400 quid in order to like start and then go, oh, I don't like this. Yeah, and obviously that gets kind of difficult to get your mates into it, So it's like, hey guys, I'm collecting this amazing game. Do you want to play? It'll only cost you as much as the latest PlayStation and several games. Okay, I can see why that might be a hard sell.
Yeah.
And obviously but it got more expensive when they got rid of it. Where I got it, basically back in the day, it was a bit of a shame because most of these armies that you've seen, most of these models have been bought since they got discontinued. So most of that is money that hasn't really gone to Games Workshop. It's gone to secondary sellers. It's gone to people on eBay. It's gone to people who are selling off their old armies when they got out of the game and stuff. And it's a shame because obviously it's like a lot of money has been spent on it. But before that, because obviously when I first started, which was about I started years and years ago, but I have barely any of those models left because I don't know if you have this, but I went to university and guess what my mum did?
She threw them out.
No. It's terrifying, man. Like literally, when you think about how much they'd be worth on eBay now and stuff.
How much would like something on that? Because you mentioned one of them, I can't remember. You said one of them was quite expensive.
Oh, well, Loki FLR, he's not that expensive, actually. To be fair, you could probably find one for about 30, 40 quid for that guy, which isn't that expensive in the scheme of things. But some of the models I have are ludicrous, where it's like, you get like with the Tomb Kings, where they have these big snake riders called Necropolis Knights. And they, to get them new in box, we're probably talking about sort of 90 quid. And they were 30 quid retail when they were available in shop. But now, because they're so rare, they have tripled in value effectively. And you get other stuff like there's a big monster that the Tomb Kings have, which is basically, he costs 30 quid back in the day, and now 120, 150 if it's new in box. But luckily, because they're going to bring the game back with the old world, Games Workshop have said, we're going to bring back lots of stuff. So I think what they're probably going to do is bring back a lot of the old kits, which is kind of helping at the minute because it means it's like lowering the value on eBay on secondary things. Because people are like, oh shit, I can't keep charging like 120 quid for this. Oh, I'll charge 60, which is, better than a kick in the teeth. But some of my armies, like the lizard men that we saw there, and I don't think we saw them, but it was, what did I collect? Vampire Counts, lizard men, and I started a Slanesh army before they got rid of everything. But then everything else is basically from eBay. It's from people who still had collections, from Facebook Marketplace, things like that.
Wow.
Or like Titan Forge or 3D printing.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
There we go. Okay, at least I answered the question quickly.
That was great. Big ups to our DJ behind the scenes, Jace, who not only made these bumpers, our producer and boss, but he raps on the side.
And he's now made me deaf in one ear, so it's great.
Yeah, I think I've lost it a long time ago. Sorry.
What?
I know, Graham, you touched a little bit on this, but why Warhammer? What draw you into this world?
It's a fun thing. Like it's the fact of, I can't emphasize enough how fun Warhammer Fantasy is as a game. And while I have played all of the Warhammer games, so at one point or the other, because I remember when Warhammer Fantasy was killed, Age of Sigmar came out, and then I tried playing that for a bit, and I held in fairly well. I held in for about 2.5 years, so I saw like about 2-3 editions of it. But it just wasn't scratching the itch at all. Like it's literally like someone taking chess away and being like, "Oh, here's Twister," and you're like, "What?" and you're not saying it's bad. You're just going, "But that's not what I want." Like you know, and you just go back to your chessboard, which is effectively what happened. But I played all of them, but like, yeah, Warhammer Fantasy is an absolutely fantastic game. So that was a big allure to get into it, because I used to play years and years ago, and then obviously high school, went to uni, did all of that stuff, and then got back into it later and just immediately got hooked on this game. But the why effectively is to relax. Like I am a ludicrously busy person. Like I'm a workaholic where I do a lot of stuff. I have a day job. I have loads of stuff. I'm a drag queen. I am a podcaster. I'm a musician. Wow. I do all of these crazy things. And like,
have you been able to do it all at once? Have you been able to do your drag, do the music, and be on Star Trek?
I was thinking you were gonna paint Warhammer. I'm like, that's gonna be a weird performance. We can do it. We can do it with just me in drag on stage, my own lip syncing to my own music.
Yeah,
you know, recording it for a podcast, painting Warhammer. It's gonna be big.
Do it.
To be fair, actually, that sounds like a great routine. But it's one of these things. I'm a massive workaholic, and what I love about Warhammer is it forces me to relax. It literally, I'm a person where if I'm not doing something, if I'm not at an event, or I'm just watching television, I'll be on my phone, I'll be on the laptop, I'll be thinking about this, that, and the other. With Warhammer, all that matters is putting that model together. All that matters is clipping the bits off the sprue, gluing them together, painting the thing, getting that fucking gold trim for 40 guys. I'm painting dwarves at the minute. Okay, I'm painting dwarves at the minute, and the amount of gold trim is insane. Like I'm sick of my life, but it's this wonderful thing where you get to relax because you can't do anything else. You have to just sit there with the brush, with the model, painting it, and it kind of gives you a bit of peace. I've ruined it now because I'll always have a podcast on in the background or something, but still, so I'm like, okay, it's kind of multitasking. But no, it is, and that's how I've got through that much stuff. Because the amount of times when I just go, hey, I've got an evening free, I've been talking to people all week, I've been doing this all week, I just want to do nothing, like, you know, and it kind of allows me to just justify rather than just sitting staring at a wall while I regenerate my patience. You know, that's which is the alternative.
Yeah,
wow, that's therapeutic for you. Like
it's just really therapeutic. It's like,
So I noticed you said you won awards for your paint.
Yeah,
have you been victorious in live battle with these?
No, I'm crap at it. No, no. It's one of these things where I am a horrible opponent. Okay, I'm a horrible opponent because winning means nothing to me. Okay, for me, it is very much the journey. It's very much the journey and making sure that other people enjoy themselves is my motto. Like, so it tends to be a lot of the time I never play competitively because I'm friends with a lot of tournament players and they are filthy. They're literally like, well, I've spent ages carefully planning my army so that I'll absolutely decimate anyone I come in contact with and stuff. And I'm just like, I took these guys because they're fun and nobody uses them because they're crap in the game. And I'll just be like, that's my thing. Or my strategy is just something really daft. And a lot of the time I'll go for thematic army. Well, you know how it is where like video games and stuff where there's a loadout you can take that is the perfect loadout. It's the best thing you can possibly take. Or you could just be like, I'm going to wear this armor because I like it.
Yeah.
It's very much that kind of choice. And so with that, I think people tend to like playing me because I tend to make sure that they have a fun time. I be very silly. I tend to be quite fun with the game, and I tend to be sort of like very understanding and kind of going, hey, let's just have fun here rather than that. Because I don't mind if I lose, yeah, and so that's it. So I've never really leaned into the competitive side. The only time that I went really hard and really tried and then I won a tournament was because a friend of mine really wanted the prize. The prize that they put up was this really rare, I think it was like a belt buckle that Games Workshop did like 15 years ago or something. And my mate really wanted it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to win this tournament. So yeah, but otherwise I'm like, well,
Yeah. Just maybe a stupid question, but where do you play these games? And
oh, I don't really. The gaming centers. So usually play them in your house. So most Warhammer. Well, no, I say most. Some Warhammer players have their own game rooms where they have tables. So most Warhammer games are played on a 6 foot by 4 foot table.
Right.
Is American measurement?
Yeah, 6 foot by 4 foot. That's
6 foot by 4 foot.
Yeah,
I'm doomed if I'm trying to do it. Yeah.
1 meter high.
It's 1.35 meters. But yeah, like a 6 foot by 4 foot table, and then basically you can set up on that. So you have your own terrain that you put out. So you can buy like actual terrain pieces that mix up the battlefield, and then they affect the game, and then you can play the game on it. So you have your mate over, you play a game together. But then there's also places like some Games Workshop stores are big enough that they have gaming tables that you can go in and play, and then they have gaming centers. So for instance, there's great places where a lot of the tournaments are held at places where they're literally just a warehouse that has like 26 by 6 foot by 4 foot tables in, and they just get like I have a problem where I haven't managed to go to any of the Warhammer Fantasy events this year, like any of the tournaments, because they all sell out far too quickly. So I've been trying to get tickets, but it feels like if it's the Warhammer equivalent of getting Taylor Swift tickets that we've had over the last couple of weeks, where basically people have been up at 8 a.m. being like, come on, get this. And then we have this where, because a lot of them, when you have 2 players per table, you only have 50 spaces. And that's still 25 massive tables. So a lot of these events can only do like 50 people or 100 people at a time. So once the tickets come out, they sell out pretty quickly. So, yeah, so.
Wow. Is there I don't know, is there someone that is like a referee or someone that oversees, like, so
all events will have someone, usually the organizer, the organizer, or they'll have a team of people. So whenever I've organized events and I've been like the person running it, I've basically been one myself, but I've had like referees effectively who are people who also know the rules, who go around, and if 2 people have a dispute, so if they're like, oh well, I think this rule works like this, I think that rule works like that, they kind of come over and make a judgment of it. Which the rules tend to be pretty clear, but there are bits where where you're like, oh, hang on, what?
Does it get a little bit heated? The people get a little bit frustrated.
You know what?
Flip all the pieces.
It used to, like, I don't know. I can only speak from my own experience, okay? And I'm lucky that I've had a wonderful experience with Warhammer. But when I started, when fantasy was still alive, before Games Workshop killed it off, before it became this kind of extra, new universe version of it. You got a lot of dickheads. You got a lot of people who are very, very. I'm realizing that's a very English insult. A lot of. I would say wankers or tossers or. These probably aren't offensive to you. So that's fine.
No.
A lot of these bastards. And who literally you would just get scared of playing them because you'd be like, oh wow, that guy's here. He's a dickhead. Great, But kind of since it died and it became like hardcore fans that did it, we've kind of lost them all. All of the players are kind of like, hey, they're playing it because they want to play it and stuff. And you get people who are hyper competitive, but they're not rude or like dickheads about it. Occasionally you get stuff in 40K, which is still an actively supported game. Like it's Games Workshop's biggest product. I play a couple of games of that like every year, and some of the people you play are a bit frustrating. So there's one guy, because games are timed, where they basically, it's like a chess game where you go, hey, in a tournament, you have 2.5 hours per game, and then you kind of move on to the next one. And you get people like, I got this man who is a bit older than me, and I've never seen someone be so slow. And it felt like he was filibustering, but he wasn't. He was just very, very slow at the game. And it was literally got to the point where I was like, should I move the bits for you? Should I move your pieces for you? Just like, he's like slowly reaching over, being like, and I'm just like, no, I'll do it for you. It's like your dad using a computer and you're standing over him being like, look, let me type it. Look, I'll just sort it. And it's literally, and that's probably the biggest frustration I've got in games is literally the other person just being a bit slow about things.
Yeah. My God.
I quite like that analogy. I'm gonna give myself kudos for that analogy because that's exactly what it's like.
That's
with my dad, where he's like, I know how to use the computer, and then with one finger typing.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I have several people that I work with that are like the masters of.
I'm like, there are other fingers, Dad.
You can
look. There's another hand.
So the object of the game is to take out your opponents, obviously. Like obviously in chess, you got to take out the king and queen. Is that similar to Warhammer?
All the games have different win conditions. So a lot of things so basically what you do is at the beginning of a game, you roll a mission or you select a mission, and then that determines the winning thing. So you might have it where your whole army gets destroyed, but you got the thing, and therefore you win. It's very good. And the great thing about Warhammer 40,000, like in that, it actually has special missions that you pick yourself. So in the new edition that just come out, called like Warhammer 40,000 10th edition, I haven't played it yet because I've been too busy with other stuff and only playing fantasy when I actually get a moment. But basically, they have it where you have a deck of cards which have random missions on them. So you shuffle the deck, you draw like 3 cards, and it says, you need to do this. You need to put a unit on that. Oh, you need to put you need to kill the enemy general and stuff. And then as you play the game, you can like achieve them. And then I think you trade them in for points. You go, hey, I achieved that one, so I got like 3 points. And then at the end of the game, whoever got the most. But they've added a new mechanic now, which is great, which basically is like a gambit. So it means that if you get to you draw a gambit card, and then if you're getting to the end of the game and you realize that you can't actually do the mission you set out to do, you can do this backup mission that might be something totally crazy, but it's a bit of I'll turn the tables and I'll, get victory from defeat, effectively.
Oh.
It's a very nuanced game. And
because it's
so big and enjoyable.
Just
because you could literally
it's a whole new world to us.
You could just sit and read all of the lore books. Like I was saying before we started, I tried to do a YouTube channel that was just basically me reading all of the lore in order for it to be accessible to people, so that rather than sitting reading the books and stuff, they could just hear it in a podcast. But time again. But it's the idea of you could literally enjoy Warhammer just from the source books and just from the lore and just from the novels that they bring out, or you can enjoy it from the painting and modeling, or you can enjoy it from playing games. You get people who have no interest in painting at all, and they buy their models pre-painted, or they pay someone a fortune to paint their armies for them, or they'll kind of buy them, put them together, and never paint them. So you'll be facing an opponent where it's just grey, just grey plastic. And you're going,
I'm fighting.
Something
Billy
feels
the
wrong
Gray.
about beating you up. You know,
Yeah. Wow.
How
Yeah,
many
but
models do you have, Graham? Like, you
I
must have thousands of
I
pieces.
can't even count that high.
Yeah.
If I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah,
But yes,
no.
definitely over 1,000. Definitely, probably about. If we include the ones in boxes, I'm probably going to say about 3,000 models. I think.
Wow. And you said that
Because
you're
the thing,
not.
like you've shown some pictures there, whereas effectively, I think I have 14 different armies, and each one of those is probably about 100 to 200 models in an army.
Wow.
And then the amount I
And
have
you
in boxes ready to be put together.
Wow.
Yeah, it's heavily addictive. It's heavily addictive, but B, it's a hobby where there's resale value. It's something where it's kind of like a retirement fund where I had to increase the actual insurance on my house last year because basically my brother was visiting and kind of went, hang on, how much is your contents insured for? And I was like, oh yeah, that's not going to cover the Warhammer collection because, like I say, to buy some of it back, these 3 things that cost me 30 quid, to buy them back, it would be 90 quid. So you kind of just go, oh, okay. So it's one of those ones where it's a great hobby where if you ever get out of it, you can make money back rather than a one where it's going to sell for pennies later on.
Yeah.
Especially if you painted them, because you'll get someone who will pay like twice as much as it would cost to buy it normally because it's painted for them.
And then you've done the cool retro colors, so they're like, "Oh, that's very unique. I'm going to do those."
I think it's one of these things where it's really bad because sometimes you see people where they're like selling their collections and they're going, "Oh, I'm getting out of the hobby. I've just had a kid. I need money and stuff," and they'll be selling it, and you'll just be like, "That is fucking horrible." And you're sitting there being like, "I don't want to pay that much money for them." In order to strip the paint off them to make them better, and so it's like. But that's the thing, you can paint them however you want, and some people have interesting taste. So
true.
Amazing.
This is me being diplomatic. This is diplomatic.
Amazing. Yeah. And I noticed just quickly, you keep them in trays or drawers, like they're.
I do. That's not standard. Basically, what I've got is I've got in the lovely world of IKEA. So I went to IKEA, right, and I got all these lovely shelves. I got these things, and then you put the trays in, and then you pull them out. And basically, it's meant for jewelry. They're like the shelves are meant for like jewelry and stuff in IKEA, but they basically pull out shelves from a wardrobe unit. And I basically bought like 12 of them kind of thing and made like a big sort of fitting thing. So I've lost a fair bit of my room, but then it means that it's easier to pull them out on trays. But if you mean the actual movement trays where the actual units themselves, like the collection of models are on little trays, that's just part of Warhammer Fantasy. Like my favorite part of Warhammer Fantasy is because you field units in little phalanxes. Phalanxes? I've never said that out loud. I've never actually needed to say that out loud, but phalanxes, of like 5x5 or whatever models. And then they get put on little trays, and then they're what you push around on the board. So you don't need to move every model one by one in Fantasy. You just push the whole unit and turn the unit around. And it means that you can transport them better. So you can basically get a full unit, magnetize it to that little tray so that the models won't fall off. And then you can basically put it into a carry case, and then you just get to the game, pull the full unit on its base out.
Wow.
And then put it on the board. Whereas with the other games, Age of Sigmar and 40K, they're all on round bases and they don't use movement trays, which makes games a bit tedious because a lot of the armies, you have the same amount of models. You still have like 200 models in your army, but then you have to move each of them individually every 10 minutes, and you're just going, okay, I'm sick of moving little guys around the board.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, this is amazing.
Man, there's so much information.
Yeah.
I know. I don't far too much about this.
No,
great. Now I know about Warhammer. I didn't know about. I've seen it because where I live, there's quite a bit of game stores, I want to say, and board gaming places right by my job. There's a big one. You know who this is? Todd Stashwick was just there, and I was so furious because I had to be in the other office, and I was like, God, I could have met Todd right on the street. So
well, that's the thing. It's like I'm basically doing press because I'm part of a thing called Girl Global, which is basically an LGBT podcast but it's like a podcast, but it's also like a media thing. So basically we have an active blog, we interview people, we cover events and stuff like that. And one of the events we're covering in a couple of weeks' time, probably like a week after this goes out, is Mr. Gay Great Britain 2023. And also MX Drag Great Britain 2023, which is basically like a big, where we basically crown. It's a pageant. It's basically a gay man pageant and a drag queen pageant. And the final of it is happening at Annick Gardens, which is the outside of Hogwarts, effectively, which is. So it's basically, and in a couple of weeks' time, it's the final of that. And bizarrely, What Culture are going to be covering it with Sean Ferrick, who we both know.
Yeah, I saw that. I was in your live today.
Shit, that's awesome. So we're both going to be there, and it's just going to be a bit weird that I'm just like, oh, okay, So I was kind of scared that I'd be there and miss him. So I'm just going, right, okay, I'm going to find you. We're going to both be at this event. We're going to have a chat. Yeah, I am going to be in a dress, of course, which is going to be a bit weird, but
no,
swings and roundabouts.
No, he'll be cool. Trust me, you'll be fine. And I'm looking forward to the pictures because your makeup's always on point. So it's like, oh, well, he does that very well.
It should be quite good. It's one of these silly things, but the problem is, it's like you have a thing. It's like a wedding. Okay, I don't know if straight men have this, but basically, where you don't outshine the star, where basically, if you go to a wedding, you don't
wear white to outshine the bride.
Yeah, that's it. You just go, cool, look pretty, don't look prettier. Like they're the rules. And I think it's like this because it's a drag competition. It's the idea of going, wear something sort of, nice, but, you want the people looking at the person you're interviewing, So it's a sort of thing. It's a tactful outfit.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, have fun. I'm looking forward to seeing those pictures and video. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, there should be some videos. Yeah.
We're gonna wrap this up. But Joe, is there anything that you want to ask Graham before we go? Is there any other questions?
Are the painting behind you, is that from Warhammer or is that from Silent?
No, that is Silent Hill 2. We have a wonderful thing now.
Triangle head. Yeah.
All of you wonderful nerds watching this. Basically, Konami are a world of bad business decisions where for years they decided to be like, hey, should we bring out merch? No, what a silly idea that is. Let's bring out pachinko machines. And then basically a couple of years ago, they just decided to actually go, hey, we should open a merch store. And then finally started releasing merchandise for beloved properties like Castlevania, like Silent Hill.
Sokoden.
That's it. All of these amazing things. And this is one of the things that I have wanted since Silent Hill, the video game Silent Hill 2 came out in the year 2000, which is it's a picture, it's a painting that you find in the game representing Pyramid Head, and it's called Remains of the Misty Day, Remains of the Judgment, I believe it's called. Okay. Wow. And I wanted this for the longest time, and it was the most obvious thing where you're like, Konami released this as a poster 20 years ago, and then as soon as they released it on the store, I was like, I'm getting that. I'm getting a frame for it, and I'm hanging it up. So it's the only picture I have in my streaming room at the minute, I'm afraid, but it's a good one.
There you go. There you go.
It's a bit barren looking at your backgrounds. You've got your amazing collection behind you, Rick.
Yeah.
And Joe Dove, you've got more LEDs than I think I can cope with.
Yeah, I've got LEDs. I've got starships that were supposed to stay lit up, but you got to charge the batteries or something. I don't know.
See, that's the thing. To be fair, but at least you've seen my Warhammer collection. And you know that the rest of it's not as barren as this.
Right.
Graham, from me and Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was an absolute pleasure, and thank you for sharing your world of Warhammer, because I had absolutely no idea what Warhammer was. When Joe said we've got a guest that collects Warhammer, I'm like, what?
Did you think it was some kind of historic reenactment thing or something?
I don't know.
I just like hammers. Here's my Warhammer collection, and it's just but all of them are mysteriously covered in blood. And you're like, okay, right, stop the stream.
Guy from the UK with collect my hammers. They're like, oh, great, Joe. Good job. All right.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, Greg, you've invited a psychopath on. Well, not really an incorrect phrase there, but still,
But, yeah, we truly do appreciate it. Graham, tell everyone where they can find you, all your links, everything.
Oh, hang on. Hopefully they'll be in description below. But if you want to follow my drag career, where I do interviews, I do shows and whatnot up here in Newcastle and Sunderland in the northeast of England, it is the Velvet Snatch on Twitter. No, not on Twitter because that's gone now. I have a whole family of snatches. I have the Velvet Snatch. I have Velcro Snatch, but she's a bit more abrasive. Who is the evil goth sister, and then I have Candy Snatch, who is the bimbo Barbie. And hilariously, I am in town tomorrow as Candy Snatch with blonde wig and keeping the beard, obviously, because drag is. Because there are no rules for drag, basically. Drag is genderless, if you wanted to be. And pink, where we're going to see Oppenheimer followed by Barbie.
Oh, Barbenheimer, yes.
And I feel sorry for the poor bastard because I only managed to book seats on one side. So there's some poor bastard who's going to be sitting next to me during Oppenheimer with me dressed as Barbie, effectively. You enjoying this? I hope it's got an happy ending.
That's gonna be awesome.
This guy just be like, okay.
Well,
oh my God.
That's all.
That's the Velvet Snatch. For my music, it is Sonoise, which is spelt like you're seeing on the screen there. I haven't released it in a while. It's a bit of a problem because there's two albums of ambient music that are ready to go but not finished. And I haven't had time because I've been doing everything else in the world. To stop finishing them. But you can check that out on Spotify and stuff. And also follow me on, I am part of Trekking Up North and Nerdy Up North with Goodwill, where we record that every Friday. We have our Trek episodes. And then I'm also on the Nerdy Up North podcast for what random episodes they have. And then finally, the Girl Global podcast, which is GURL-global.com. Oh, girl.
There it is.
Which you can stream on Spotify and stuff like that. And that's great. That's LGBT stuff. We interview a lot of people. We've interviewed a lot of drag race queens and stuff. So we've just seen that Jimbo has won All Stars 8, which is amazing. We interviewed them a couple of years ago, which was great. We've interviewed Jinx Monsoon. We've interviewed loads of people. Like it's the I like doing what I do. It's busy, but it's fun. But that's girlglobal.com or find us on Spotify. Yeah, that's everything.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Joe, just make sure you get all those links down below.
I have this thing. I'll slide in his DMs and get it.
Slide into my DMs, will you, Taylor? Well, do one podcast. You think you can do whatever you want? That's it. You can buy me a drink first.
I bought the ticket next to you at Oppenheimer. So
that's better. Too bad. I'm not going to even pretend I'm that tough. Actually, a shot. Buy me a shot. That'll do it.
Jay,
all right.
Thank you as always, mate. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely, sir.
And I guess we'll see everyone on the shelf next. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Bye.
Thanks,
Check out SpectrumSanctorum.net for all of our podcast merch. We have an entire merch store ready to give you all the things that you loved about our podcast. And get notified on all of our socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our Spectrum Sanctorum merch store. Follow us today and be sure to hit that bell when you're watching our YouTube videos so you can be notified of when a new episode releases.